such as seals. Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today's film is Birdemic, Shock and Terror. This guy who drives around a lot and is a software salesman and speaks kind of like how a 4-year-old would write dialogue. And he does a sale for $1 million. And then his company gets sold for $1 billion. He gets a lot of money. He meets a girl who's a model who then gets to be the cover girl of Victoria's Secret. And then they go on a date, and romance blooms. And then birds attack. Thus the Birdemic. Really badly CG animated birds like fly into stuff and explode. This is one of the most tediously awful, terrible films I've ever seen. And in a lot of ways, with this in the room, I find that kind of refreshing. Because in a time when nerddom and geekdom has become such a mainstream silly thing, I think it's a good thing that we still have cult movies that are real cult movies. When I saw Drive Angry, my biggest complaint was the third act, when it becomes this big Hollywood kind of showdown action movie at the end. And it just didn't feel like a cult movie. I almost wonder if this was on purpose, and some parts of it, the funny credits, the sound editing, it just seems too perfectly bad. It's almost a masterpiece of awfulness. And that's why I kind of think they knew what they were doing, but I also know that people are that stupid. I used to hear about that in interviews about Mr. Science Theater, that they had heard about people who made movies to be featured on the show. I never saw any of those movies or heard anything about those movies, so I'm just gonna pretend maybe that didn't happen. If one of those existed, I imagine this would be like the greatest one of those. The Room was always a bad movie. I don't think that was ever on purpose. Birdemic, I could actually see it going either way, but I think it's highly possible. There's tons of bad movies that are of this caliber that no one knows the names of and have just been forgotten and probably destroyed, and there's probably still some around. I think what makes these films to be kind of these epic legendary titles is because an audience has found it and made it fun. You're with people and they make these films fun, and I think Birdemic is very much like that. Like, I tried to watch The Room and Birdemic alone, and let me tell you, they are horrible and tedious and terrible, and they're kind of funny, but then when you see it with a lot of friends and you've had a few drinks and it's midnight, this is hilarious, and it's great fun. And just like Manos, Hands of Fate is the best Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode without a doubt in my mind. And I know it's stereotypical. When you watch that episode, there's some chemistry there with like a movie that's so bad and the idea of making fun of a movie. And I think certain movies just go so perfectly well with that, you can just have a great time. And Plan 9's one of those, and this is one of those, and The Room's one of those. The concept of a birdemic reminds people of the birds, and Tippi Hedren is actually on a TV in this movie. There's a scene where there's a TV playing and she's there. She was in this director's previous film, which I think is weird, like why he couldn't get her to come back for Birdemic, and why she wouldn't come back. I mean, come on. Actually, they're working on a Birdemic 2, which is gonna be in 3D, which I'm kind of excited for, such as seals. This is a really bad movie. It's fun to quote because there's so many horrible quotes in it. It's fun to reference, and it's fun to make fun of. But it's a horrible movie. It's definitely one of the best, worst movies out there. And I think, you know, I'm glad we're still making them after all these years, you know? Alright, so if you have seen Birdemic and you would like to talk about it, then comment below, down there in the comments, and subscribe if you would like to. Such as seals.